Hey everyone, John here and welcome back to another tutorial. This time I'm going to show you how you can use the Beat Reactor inside of Continuum's video glitch effect to control exactly when the video glitch is going to appear based on your audio. And I'm also going to break down this look, which is something I developed while I was looking into how to use Beat Reactor with video glitch. So go ahead, download the project file and let's walk through it. If you have downloaded the project file, you will have to import your own audio file because we couldn't include the one I use for copyright reasons. But once you've imported that, just drop it into this alarm comp. I've got my alarm sound effects here just looped a few times just to extend the length of it. And I'll show you how to link that up with Beat Reactor in a moment. First of all, let's just open up this infected comp. So this is a gray solid with some nice type-on text there. I'll show you how to create that in a moment. And to that layer, I've applied BCC plus VideoGlitch. So let's just turn that on. It has been reset. So these are the default settings. Let's do a quick preview. So we've got our audio in there. At the moment, it's not linked up to the audio. But it's got this nice default glitchy look. Now, you could go into FX Editor and just grab one of the great presets, but we're going to start with the basic settings. So just the default settings so that it doesn't get confusing. All right, so select the alarm layer, press L twice, and there's our waveform. So my audio has this kind of scratchy section, which is slightly louder. It's got this sort of shrill alarm section in here, and this sort of scratchy section. And that's what I want to link my video glitch up to. So my video glitch only appears when we hear this loudest part of the audio. So if I select Infected again and twirl open Beat Reactor. Now, Beat Reactor actually is a standalone effect in Continuum. You can sample audio and link it to all different kinds of effects parameters. But a lot of effects like Video Glitch have it built in. So the first thing we need to do is enable it. And the next thing is to select the audio. So I'm going to choose Alarm. All right, so you'll see these bars down the bottom. And there's also this gray bar over the right. So this is the output meter. So whenever you see something in this bar here, it means it's going to affect whatever parameter you choose over here. And under Apply Parameter A, this is where you can choose the different parameters to effect. And I'm going to choose Glitch Intensity. There is actually a B and C. So you could, control Glitch Intensity with A. You could control shift intensity with B and so on, okay? Once you know how to use one of these, then the other ones are, exactly the same. All right, so notice down here when I did choose glitch intensity that you are seeing this output bar. So it should be sort of outputting something over here, right? We should be able to see the glitch, but not yet. And there's a reason for that, which I'll explain in a moment. But for now, let's just take a look at what's going on over here. We have this sort of light gray box, which is encompassing the levels, and we can see something over here. So if I just grab this corner, this is the sample box. Notice as I drag it around, then this is changing, okay? So as I drag it down, basically more of the sample box is filled with more of these bars, so we're seeing a higher output. And that's controlled by this here, sampler, box percentage. So if more of the box is filled, a greater percentage of the box is filled, we're getting a higher output, and we should be seeing more in here. Now, we also have an option here for max frequency. So this will look at the maximum frequency. You can see it's just over here, and we're getting a higher output bar. Watch what happens if I drag the sample over to this one. So this is now the max frequency. So we're getting a slightly lower output because it's not as high as that max frequency. If I drag it over here, like this, now we're getting it really low because the max frequency is quite low, okay? And the other option we have, just bring this back to here, is toggle on off. So here, if there's anything inside the sample box, we'll get full output. And if there's nothing inside the sample box, still there's something in there, but if there's anywhere where there's nothing, probably not on this audio, but if I drag the sample over here, Watch what happens as soon as we don't get anything inside the sample box. We get nothing in here. Okay, so that's useful as well. So full on, full off. Very nice. I'm going to switch mine back to box percentage. And you can see there's only a tiny percent of the box filled, so we've got a tiny output. But why aren't we seeing anything over here? Let's take a look. So we can see it there. And we can't see it there, but that's okay because we've not got any output. Let's just grab our sample box and just make it a little wider, like that. So we're getting some, but we're not getting anything there. And this is specifically to BeatGlitch. Now, but BeatGlitch is inherently a random effect, and that's what you generally want. Most of the time you want to drop it on and just have it look really nice and random, right? But here we specifically want to control it with audio. And the reason we can't see it now is, from what I worked out, is because of this option here, glitch interval. At the moment it's at 20, so we're not going to see the glitch all the time. So even if the Beat Reactor should be showing it, the glitch interval is so high that it's not visible. So it's trying to show it, but there's nothing there. Now I'm going to turn this off again, and I'm going to come down and just make this 1. Okay, we'll just turn off the audio for a sec. Preview. See, now we're seeing glitching the entire time. So now Beat Reactor's got something to work with. So with that at 1, we'll turn it back on, turn our audio back on, and let's preview that. Okay, so we're still seeing it all the time, and that's because effect on parameter is add to values. So whatever we have in our value set here, Beat Reactor is going to add to that. What we want to do is replace those values. Aha. So now when we preview, we're getting what we expect. We're getting more glitch when the bar's higher, the output bar, and less when it's lower. Let me just stop that and just drag through. So nice low bar, very little glitch. Nice high bar, lots of glitch. And we can control it even more a few ways. One is with the sampler, with the sample box. So you can see lots of the box is filled, lots of the sample box. If I want to just knock that back a bit, I just make that a little smaller. Now less of the box is filled, remember, because we're using the box percentage option. So I'll get even less. Obviously, when there's no bar, I'll get none because there's no bars inside the sampler. And then when it goes in, I'll get a little less because less of the box is full. Okay, so really easy to control how much glitch we get. You can also use the output range. You can choose a preset here, or with custom, you can have the min and max values. You can adjust those. You can bring max down and gives me less. There's also an apply strength, and there's also a fall off as well. At the moment, it's unused, so I have an immediate fall off. So if I chose something like linear, then that would give me more of a sort of fade out of the effect. But go ahead and play with those options. You should have enough now, or enough knowledge of Beat Reactor now, to be able to use it with any of the Continuum effects, including the standalone Beat Reactor. If you have any questions, leave a comment. But let's just quickly jump into the final look that I created and break that down. All right, so we'll start down the bottom of the main comp. We have the alarm comp with the alarm sound effects. There's 2 more sound effects layers that I have. This one is the ambient spaceship noise, and the one above that is the incoming data transmission. So it's a little peep, peep, peep as the text types on. But you'll have to find your own versions of these if you want to recreate this. Above that, we have screen. I'm just going to solo that. This has some effects applied. We'll look at those in a moment, but let's open up screen and we'll go into text. And I've used this layer here, infected. I tried some different text, but hit on infected as my final choice. Now, in order to get that to type on, didn't do anything fancy. I just did a search in effects and presets for typewriter to see if there was anything there. And I found this blinking cursor typewriter console. So applied that. And if I hit E twice, you see it's got some fancy expressions that I have no idea how to write. and does the job perfectly. And the good thing about this is even if I change the text, it will update and won't break it, which is really terrific. So that's how I did the type on. Above that, we have an adjustment layer with Sapphire's pixel sort. You can see I've got a few masks there just to isolate it. And if I hit the U key, there's a couple of opacity keyframes just for that adjustment layer, just to fade that on. The idea here is that I wanted certain parts of the text to be, showing some damage as the infection grows. But I didn't want, the entire text to be like that. So that's the text. Now beneath that, we have the gray solid that we saw in the previous section of the tutorial. You will notice that with the text, it is flashing a little bit. If I just drag there, it's just flashing. That's using BCC plus Light Flicker. Now this does have the Beat Reactor as well, and I did some experiments using the same alarm audio to have the flashing, the text flashing in time with the alarm, which is the same as the glitching. But in the end, it wasn't necessary. It didn't really make a lot of difference. And I think I wanted it to flash a little bit faster anyway. So the text is flashing. We've got the screen background, and above that we have an adjustment layer called Screen Treatment. This is where everything happens. Boom. So I'll turn all those off. Let's go through these quickly. BCC plus Super LED. For this one, I just chose a preset. It was this fine square staggered. And just going to cancel that. Made some adjustments. One of the things I did do was I turned off Prism. Notice also here that it has BideoGlitch included with some basic settings, but I didn't need it in here. I wanted more control. And Prism, if I turn it on, and I've got to turn the effect on. Prism didn't quite give me the look that I wanted. It was more of that, chromatic aberration look. I wanted a little more control, so I turned it off in here. And I used a separate effect. And that was BCC Misalignment. Take a look at this. See, it's a little brighter. It's not as smeary. And just did the job to make this feel more like an LCD screen. So BCC Misalignment followed by BCC plus Film Glow, just to make the text glow. And that can be controlled, as with most glows, with the threshold. See, if I bring the threshold down, the whole screen's going to glow, and I didn't want that. I want to control that with other effects. Beneath that, we have BCC plus VideoGlitch. We've already seen this. Just come down to the audio, press L twice to see the waveform. And I've got to make sure I've actually turned it on, have I? Yes. So as I drag through, you can see when we're in the area where there's a bigger sound, so you can see more of the waveform, bigger waveform, we get more glitch, okay? We've already just covered that. And in the quieter areas, no glitch. So that's exactly as we set it up before, as I showed you. Beneath that, we have BCC plus Displacement Map. So this is what's sort of tearing up the screen with the infection. And to create the infection, I used various effects for the map. The first inside dynamic noise was After Effects' Turbulent noise effect. So that's this really beautiful dynamic noise. You see, I've chosen fractal type dynamic. Love that look. So organic and alien looking, isn't it? Now that's got a couple of keyframes. So I've just animated the turbulent noise brightness. So it goes from black, and as the brightness comes up, it starts to grow across the screen, which is really nice. And I've also just used that as a map for a white solid. Okay, so that gives me an alpha channel because it just makes me able to control the displacement map a little easier. Let me just close that up. Now in here we have, above that, Organic Strands. This is a continuum effect, BCC Organic Strands. Let me just turn off those two. So there it is there. Let's take a look at the default settings by turning on this layer. So Organic Strands is like a 3D stroke, I guess. And it is 3D, so if we just select it, come down to built-in camera here and just adjust the Z position. Look at that. You can go zoo and fly through it. Very nice. It's also got this really nice sort of organic undulation, which I liked. That's controlled in the organic noise settings. It's got an auto-evolve speed and various other settings here. You can do random bend and all sorts of stuff. So it's very organic, and it really caught my eye when I was looking for something to create this, this alien goo or whatever it is. So I'm just going to turn that off and just turn this one back on. So that's basically the default, just with a few minor adjustments, including animating the length and the thickness. That way I can have it grow on like that, see? Really nice. And below that we have Turbulent Displace, After Effects Effect, and After Effects CC Vector Blur. I've duplicated that and put another version on top at 100% opacity. And I've also applied Sapphire's pixel sort to that. So the idea was to make this kind of look kind of organic, but kind of techy as well. Pixel sort's good like that. It's got a sort of technical look to it. You can see they almost look like drips. So sort of like, I don't know, binary drips or something like that. So that's on top of the dynamic noise. And that is my map. So just close that up and come back to screen treatment. And there's BCC Displacement Map with the dynamic noise as a map. Okay. And because I've used an alpha channel rather than a black and white map, we're only affecting the white pixels. The black area is not affected. And that's important. Otherwise, the whole screen gets shifted. You probably had that happen to you when you use displacement maps. All right. So that's the screen. Let's have a look at the effects we've applied directly in here. It's going to turn them off. Now, the first one is really subtle. This is BCC plus Light Leak, and you won't see a lot of difference, but I just wanted to create some irregularity in the color. It's all very similar, but by using Light Leak with little to no animation, and you can see down here, I've used some variations of green. If I just make something a little brighter, you'll probably be able to see it a little easier. Just make these a little brighter. You see it starts to get a little more blue there. And then by adjusting the various settings here, things like rotation and scale, I just was able to have some very subtle variation in the color. And this is kind of from my 3D work when I'm doing textures in 3D. It's much more realistic on a model when you've got variation in color. So I just sort of brought that idea across to this. So I'll just undo a few times. Make sure I've got my previous settings. Okay, so that's followed with BCC plus Film Glow. So we had the big soft glow inside the screen comp, but now I've added another one on top of this. Slightly narrower glow, so slightly smaller radius. Make it a bit more bright and hot. And once again, adjusting the threshold just to zero in on that area there. And below that, we have Sapphire's Distort Blur. Look, so using Distort Blur and using the same, or a similar dynamic noise map as the map, we get that look. So it starts to have a sort of depth to it, and it looks almost like glass or, semi-transparent. It's got some 3D sort of thickness to it. And I'm using a slightly different map for this. I'm using the same dynamic noise comp, so it's exactly the same, but I'm using just a slightly adjusted organic strands look. I didn't want to do as much to it as the text as the screen one, sorry. So I'll just turn on the dynamic noise. One thing I have applied to this is S-Distort Blur. I didn't want these strands to sort of go up and through and be separate from the dynamic noise. So what I did was I just used S-Distort Blur, once again using that as the lens, so that when the strands get to the area where the noise is, where the turbulent noise is, they blur out. Okay. So they're still here because there's no noise there, but as they move over here, they start to sort of, join with it, fuse with it. That was the idea behind that. So that's my dynamic noise organic strands map. And that's being used with the S-distort blur here. And that's giving me that really creepy looking, really nice looking sort of glassy, semi-transparent, thickness to this. I really like this. I've got this sort of fall off on this as well, which is really nice. Without that, it just looks a little flat, right? It looks a bit weird, but this gives it a thickness. It looks like, it's growing on top of the screen, in front of the screen. I really like that. Turn on the light leaks again. So a little bit of variation there. Okay. So I've taken the dynamic noise and organic strands and I've put it on top as well. Okay, because it's giving me a little bit more color, luminance variation. I've used classic color dodge, and I've used a bunch of effects on this as well. So that's the layer with normal like that, as you saw it before. It still looks nice as well. But with classic color dodge, a little bit of curves to give me a little bit more contrast. Sapphire's emboss distort to give it a 3D kind of look. So it's got kind of a bump map. BCC plus Magic Sharp just to sharpen it up. A little bit of levels just to brighten it up. And again, BCC plus Displacement Map. And I've used that because we have these organic strands at the top. I've used BCC plus Displacement Map just to displace this. You see closer in here. Just to displace that a little bit as they sort of go through it or over the top of it. You can see here I've chosen map source organic strands, number 4. Love using displacement maps. So we'll come back to those two, but we'll just go up above it to Grunge. Grunge is using BCC Grunge. I've just dropped the opacity right down to 3 to give it a subtle dirty screen look. If I bring that up, you can see there's grunge there. It looks a bit weird like that. But I chose the old cardboard pack in BCC Grunge. Handy for those dirty screen looks. A little bit of curves behind that as well. Above that, we have exposure. So After Effects is exposure effect. It makes a big difference, doesn't it, with a little bit of exposure adjustment. Above that, we have another Film Glow. 3 versions of Film Glow in this. And when I turn this on, nothing's happening. That's because it has a couple of keyframes. At the end of the animation, the text gets really covered up, and I wanted a bit of extra glow on it. Let me just turn that off. That's what we had. I just wanted that to glow a little bit more. So I just animated the opacity of it towards the end of the animation. Because up here, if I had it turned on, it was too bright. Okay, so we've got those 2 organic strands above that. So basically the same organic strands, turbulent noise, emboss distort, pretty similar effects I've used for those. Just to add a little bit more detail and variation on top there. Kind of looks like seaweed, doesn't it? Okay, and almost done. Above that we have some dust. I'm always using Sapphire's dust. A little difficult to see there. I'm just going to solo that. See if we can zoom in and find a little bit. A little bit goes a long way with dust. I just move around a bit here. You can see one dot there. A little difficult to see. And just increase the brightness. There we go. So now you can see that's where the dust is. So just a little bit of drifting dust. Always really handy to add some moodiness, add a little bit of depth to your looks. But subtle is good with this. And the last layer is light flicker. Now, this is the same light flicker as I applied to the text, but see how it's going red? And the idea was, we're in a spaceship, there's alarms going off, and there's a red light flashing, brr, brr, like that, right? And how do I get it to flash red with the alarm? Same, right? Beat Reactor. So here I've used the alarm audio as the audio, and all I've done is I've come down and under audio samples. Just got to find it here. No, it's further down. See how I've just got green and blue at 0 and red at 130. So it's going to be a light flicker, but it's going to flicker red light. And that's how I did that. So now that you know how to use Beat Reactor, dig into these settings and see what I did. You can turn on the graph. See, I've got no graph there. You can turn that on, take a look, and see how that's affecting that. I'll just turn that off for now. And that's it. And I know that was a lightning fast walk through this setup. But once again, if you have any questions, please leave a comment. I can always dig much deeper into anything that you've seen here. And if you want to learn more about Sapphire and Continuum, you can visit the Boris Effects website, where you can also download a free trial. For now, this is John. Look forward to seeing you in the next tutorial.